In Canada's precarious auto sector tonight, and a potential new partnership with another country that has also been targeted by Donald Trump's tariffs, South Korea, which includes talks on bringing South Korean auto manufacturing to Canada. Now, that could include vehicles, parts, or batteries.
Breaking tonight. Canada just sent a quiet message to the world, and almost nobody noticed how big it really was. For $100, South Korea didn't just take over a battery factory. It stepped into a space Canada once believed the United States would always fill. This isn't about price. It's not about paperwork. It's about a shift in trust, a shift in direction, and a moment when Canada, without drama or speeches, started looking away from its oldest partner and toward someone new. At first glance, this story looks boring. An automaker leaves, another company takes over. Business as usual. But if you slow down and really listen, you can hear something else happening underneath. You can hear a country quietly saying, "We can't build our future the way we used to anymore." For decades, Canada's economic story was simple. Build alongside the United States. Follow its lead. Match its policies. Tie our factories to its markets. It felt safe. It felt logical. It felt permanent. The US was stable, predictable, always there, but the world changed, and Canada felt it. When
Stellantis will shut down its Windsor assembly plant for 2 weeks. The factory makes a Chrysler Pacifica minivan and similar models.
Stellantis announced it was stepping away from its ownership in the Windsor battery plant, fear spread fast. Commentators rushed to declare failure. Critics said the plan had collapsed. Workers worried about their jobs. People assumed Canada had just lost something important. What most people didn't realize was that Canada wasn't losing control. Canada was letting go. And sometimes, letting go is exactly how you secure something for the long term. When the news broke that South Korea's LG Energy solution would take full ownership for just $100, people laughed. They asked how a multi-billion-dollar future could be sold for the price of dinner. But that number was never meant to represent value. It was meant to represent intention. LG wasn't buying a factory. LG was making a promise to stay, to build, to grow, to commit to Canada not for headlines, not for short-term gains, but for decades. And that matters, because Canada has learned something painful over the last few years. Stability cannot be assumed anymore. Not even with friends. Not even with neighbors. Not even with the United States. This factory, when it was first announced, was celebrated as an automotive success. Cars. Electric vehicles. Clean future. Everyone focused on the vehicles. But that was never the real story. The real story was always the battery. Cars come and go, consumer taste changes, governments argue, markets rise and fall, but batteries sit underneath everything now. They power grids. They store renewable energy. They keep data centers alive. They stabilize entire energy systems. Batteries are not a trend. They are infrastructure. Automakers don't think like that. Automakers live and die by sales charts. When demand drops, they panic. When incentives disappear, they pull back. When regulations shift, they hesitate. That's not weakness. That's survival in a brutal industry. But battery manufacturers play a different game. When electric vehicle demand slowed across North America, automakers saw danger. LG saw opportunity. Grid storage demand exploded. Energy independence became urgent. Countries realized they needed massive battery capacity just to keep the lights on. LG understood that. Canada understood that too. And that's why this moment matters so much. When Stellantis sold its stake, it wasn't abandoning Canada. It was admitting that it couldn't anchor a future that required patience, stability, and long-term thinking. Stellantis builds cars. LG builds energy systems. Those are not the same thing. Canada chose the one that lasts. This is also where the United States quietly fades into the background of the story. For years, Canada assumed American leadership would always guide the direction of North American manufacturing, but that leadership became unpredictable. Policies shifted, support wavered, signals conflicted. Canada didn't panic. Canada adjusted. South Korea stepped into a space the U.S. no longer fully occupied, not because America disappeared, but because certainty did. LG's full ownership removes fear from the equation. The Windsor plant is no longer tied to one automaker's success. It can serve many industries, many customers, many futures. Stellantis remains a buyer, but no longer a decider. That changes everything. Workers are no longer waiting for car sales numbers. They are building capacity for an energy-hungry world. Jobs are no longer hostage to consumer mood. They are tied to infrastructure demand. Growth is no longer fragile. It's structural. Local leaders felt that immediately. They didn't sound worried. They sounded relieved. They spoke about foundations, about cornerstones, about building something that doesn't disappear when markets shake. And that word, cornerstone, matters. Cornerstones don't leave. This is why the $100 deal is so powerful. It says, we're not here to flip this, we're here to own it. For those still clinging to the idea that Canada should have fought harder to keep the automaker, this may feel uncomfortable. But that thinking belongs to an older world. A world where cars defined manufacturing strength. A world where following the U.S. automatically made sense. That world is fading. The future is energy storage. It's advanced manufacturing. It's resilience. And Canada just planted its flag right there. This wasn't an anti-American move, it was a mature one. A Canada that understands loyalty doesn't mean dependence. A Canada that knows partnerships work best when options exist. South Korea didn't replace the United States overnight. But it became something just as important, a stable, focused partner in a critical industry. That didn't happen by accident. Canada's policy direction has been moving this way for a while, away from digging things out of the ground and hoping prices stay high, toward building things that the world will always need. Batteries sit right at the center of that vision. Windsor is no longer just an auto town, it's an energy town.